William Blake's Broken Love, a study of its meaning, imagery, and place in love poetry. William Blake, an 18th and 19th century poet, painter, and printmaker, remains one of the most enigmatic and visionary figures in English literature. Known for his mystical and radical poetic style, Blake's works explore themes of innocence, experience, love, and the human condition. Among his powerful yet lesser discussed poems, Broken Love presents a deeply emotional and unorthodox portrayal of love, one that contrasts with both classical and contemporary love poetry. This video examines Blake's life and artistic philosophy, analyzes the imagery and meaning in Broken Love, and compares it to previous and subsequent representations of love in art and poetry. Born in London, Blake was largely self-educated, having attended school briefly before becoming an engraver's apprentice. His early interest in spiritual and mystical ideas heavily influenced his poetry and visual art. Blake's major poetic works include Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience, which juxtapose themes of purity and corruption. His later works, such as The Marriage of Heaven and Hell and Jerusalem, delve into complex spiritual, philosophical, and revolutionary ideas. Blake's poetry frequently challenges institutionalized religion and societal norms, advocating for a more liberated, imaginative perception of the world. Although largely unrecognized in his time, Blake's influence on Romanticism and later literary movements is undeniable. His unique blend of lyrical poetry, prophetic vision, and intricate artwork continues to inspire poets, writers, and musicians today. At its core, Broken Love is an exploration of love's potential to wound as deeply as it can elevate. Unlike traditional love poetry that idealizes romance, Broken Love exposes the pain and destruction that love can inflict when trust is broken. Blake crafts a landscape where love is not only fragile, but also susceptible to corruption by external and internal forces. The poem follows a persona grappling with the repercussions of romantic devastation as he reflects on betrayal, self-deception, and the irreversible consequences of love lost. Blake's philosophical beliefs in the tension between innocence and experience, key themes in his broader poetic corpus, are deeply embedded in Broken Love. Love, initially idealized and pure, is shown to be subject to decay, mirroring the shift from an Edenic state to a fallen world, an idea Blake frequently explored in works such as the aforementioned Songs of Innocence and Experience. Here, love's collapse is not merely a personal tragedy, but a broader reflection of human suffering and existential loss. Blake's use of vivid imagery conveys the stark transition from passion to heartbreak. He often employs natural elements, fire, storms, and decay, to symbolize emotional states, and Broken Love is no exception. In Broken Love, these elements become a force of ruin, suggesting that love, when tainted by betrayal or falsehood, does not simply fade, it annihilates. The intensity of the imagery suggests that love's dissolution is not a passive event, but a violent rupture. The speaker's pain is not merely that of loss, but of a deeper existential agony, as though his very essence has been scorched by the betrayal. One of the most striking aspects of Broken Love is its deep sense of betrayal. Blake frequently uses metaphors of chains, prisons, and darkness to depict love that has soured. Unlike Shakespearean sonnets, which often present love as a guiding light, Blake portrays it as a force capable of both elevation and devastation. In this way, Blake's treatment of love resembles his broader philosophical concerns. The idea that earthly experiences, particularly those involving deep emotion, can lead to either enlightenment or destruction, or perhaps both. The speaker in Broken Love seems trapped between these extremes, experiencing love not as a gentle force, but as a consuming fire. Blake frequently weaves biblical and mythological references into his poetry. The final stanza of Broken Love, for example, reads, "And for all eternity I forgive you, you forgive me." The line suggests the notion of forgiveness, but as less of a healing balm that soothes two wounded souls, and more of a rough-hewn agreement beaten out between exhausted adversaries. And the final two lines. As our dear Redeemer said, "This the wine and this the bread," summons to mind the notion that love requires an ultimate sacrifice of blood and flesh, and that the sacrifice is not necessarily equal on both sides. This connects with Blake's broader theological ideas. Love, like divine grace, is a state of innocence that, once corrupted, leads to suffering and estrangement. One might also detect echoes of the story of Adam and Eve, where love's initial purity is lost through transgression. In Blake's reinterpretation, love is not simply a passive victim of fate, but an entity that is susceptible to destruction by human actions and emotions. Blake's poetry often intertwines human emotions with natural imagery. Throughout the poem, references to wild landscapes, storms, and decay mirror the emotional turbulence of lost love. Broken Love contains references to dark spectres, barren landscapes, and darkened skies, all of which serve as external manifestations of the speaker's internal despair. This use of pathetic fallacy, where nature mirrors human emotions, further emphasizes the depth of suffering in broken love. Love poetry before Blake typically idealized romance, portraying it as a noble pursuit or a divine connection. The sonnets of Petrarch, Shakespeare, and even the metaphysical poets like John Donne celebrated love's transcendent qualities, despite occasionally acknowledging its difficulties. Blake, however, presents love in Broken Love as something more volatile and damaging. This perspective aligns more closely with modern depictions of love, which often explore themes of toxicity, heartbreak, and emotional entanglement, rather than idealized romance. Blake's treatment of love also differs sharply from the Romantic and Victorian poets who followed him. While poets like Lord Byron and John Keats wrote passionately about love's intensity, their works often maintained an element of admiration or longing. Blake, on the other hand, is unafraid to show the raw pain of broken love, aligning more with Gothic elements than the romantic ideal. The poem opens with the image of a spectre hovering around the speaker night and day. The image of a wild beast is also invoked. This emanation comes from within the speaker, and all these images represent the author's preoccupation with the mistakes which have led to the dissolution of his love. This spectre, this obsession and rumination, follows the lost love on a craving wind, symbolizing the speaker's desire, both physical and emotional, to return to the earlier state of happiness. The beast, the spectre, follows the speaker's lost love through the harsh landscape, representing the barrenness of absent love. The last line of the third stanza ends with a pleading question, "When will you return again?" In the fourth stanza, we see the first of several statements or questions that are ambiguously phrased. "Dost thou not in pride and scorn fill with tempests all my morn, and with jealousies and fears fill my pleasant nights with tears?" These questions might be posed either to the object of the speaker's desire, his lost love, or to the spectre of his obsession, or even perhaps to romantic love itself. Throughout the poem, Blake shifts the subject of his questions between the three of these in an intentionally ambiguous fashion. Regardless of who the question is addressed to, it is clear that the speaker is tormented day and night by the aftermath of a love gone bad. The next three stanzas refer repeatedly to 7 loves, and the meaning provenance of these loves is not immediately clear. It could be that Blake was more interested in invoking a mood through imagery and numerological mysticism than any concrete message. However, a few points can be discerned through the lyrical flourishes. 7 loves have been murdered by the knife of the same mysterious persona Blake addresses earlier. If we take that persona to be love itself, then we have the interesting conceit of love writ large, that is the persona of love and its destructive side killing the individual instantiations of romantic love that the speaker has experienced. Further, we have the image of an additional 7 loves weeping for those that were murdered. Are these the same type of emotional instantiations as the romantic loves that were bereaved of their lives? Or are they a new form, a more parental and compassionate form of love? Then we have 7 loves attending the speaker each night with torches around his couch. Presumably these are keeping the speaker awake with thoughts of the absent, deceased romantic variety. And finally we have 7 more loves crowning the speaker's mournful head with wine as he tries to sleep. Finding the precise meaning of these images may be less useful than the broader suggestion that love and its swirling variations and attending emotions are plaguing the speaker in numerous ways, from mourning of deceased romantic relationship to compelling the forgiveness of the lost lover's sins. In the 8th stanza, we see the beginning of a turn in the attitude of the speaker. Here, the speaker at first implores the lost love to return, but then asks, "When wilt thou pity as I forgive?" The implication is that the lost love is not wholly innocent, and that the writer has taken the first step toward reconciliation, forgiveness. But the reciprocal pity is not forthcoming. The next 2 stanzas explore this idea further. The 9th stanza asks whether the speaker's lost love has no sins of their own. She is apparently willing to lament the speaker's faults, but is less willing to acknowledge any culpability on her part. In the 10th stanza, the writer states that his own transgressions are either in response to, or at least proportional to, his lover's own misdeeds. The meaning of the last couplet of the 10th stanza is unclear. "They thy harlots, thou their slave, and my bed becomes their grave." Here, Blake is referring to the transgressions mentioned earlier, and the reference to harlots and his bed seem to indicate that there was some indiscretion on the part of his lost love. But the precise intended meaning of this pathetic fallacy is unclear to this writer. The 11th through the 13th stanzas deal with the writer's continuing obsession and how pathetic and destructive this preoccupation is. The writer states he will never return, but still burns for victory. This victory might come from the revitalization of the lost love, or perhaps in revenge or supremacy of some kind. In any case, that desire for victory keeps the speaker from being able to fully sever from his lover, despite the desire to never return. In the 11th stanza, we have another inscrutable bit of verse. "Living thee alone I'll have, and when dead, I'll be thy grave." Again, it is unclear if Blake is referring to the object of his desire, his lost lover, or perhaps love generally, or perhaps even his obsession itself. "And when dead, I'll be thy grave." Is this to say that the speaker will cause the death of his lover, or that when love dies it will come to rest in the speaker himself? In other words, the speaker is himself a graveyard for love. The 12th and 13th stanzas are more straightforward, though they have their own ambiguities. The speaker describes how the spectre or love will not be quelled by heaven or hell, and the speaker will chase that spectre day and night, following the pale and pitiable form through the storm. And this pursuit will bind his head with iron tears and groans of lead. The 14th through the 17th and final stanza are the resolution to all this torment. Here the speaker decides that the only way to escape this mental prison is to completely reject female romantic love. Otherwise, the speaker will never enter into eternity, presumably because he will not be in a contrite or penitent state of mind, or perhaps because it will drive him to commit a mortal sin. Or perhaps, more simply, he will never be blissful unless he can cease the pursuit of love entirely. The only answer is to destroy the current form of love and annihilate it so that a new form of love might take its place. This new form will be subservient to the speaker's fate, which is an interesting turn of phrase. Are we to understand that while fate governs the events of a person's life, that person might have agency enough to swap out an element such as love so that the program results in a different outcome? It is a titillating crack in a philosophical doorway that remains unexplored in this work. In the final stanza, we have the final result of all this contemplation. The speaker and his lost love will ultimately forgive each other, if only after exhausting all other options. And the sacrifice of blood and flesh necessary to arrive at this state of battered grace will have been made, though whether it was all worth the effort remains unclear. William Blake's Broken Love stands apart from traditional love poetry due to its stark, unfiltered portrayal of heartbreak and disillusionment. Through powerful imagery, nature symbolism, and an intense emotional depth, Blake challenges the idealization of romance, presenting love as both a source of joy and a harbinger of despair. Broken Love remains a profound and deeply affecting meditation on the complexities of human relationships that challenges conventional notions of love, presenting it as an experience that can be both transcendent and catastrophic. The poem serves as a reminder that love, in its most intense forms, is never merely an emotion. It is a force capable of shaping, breaking, and redefining the self. Through his evocative language and unflinching honesty, Blake ensures that Broken Love is not just a personal lament, but a universal testament to the power and peril of human connection.
Spectre around me night and day, like a wild beast guards my way. My emanation far within weeps incessantly for my sin. A fathomless and boundless deep, there we wander, there we weep. On the hungry craving wind, my spectre follows thee behind. Thy footsteps in the snow, wheresoever thou dost go. Through the wintry hail and rain, when wilt thou return again? Dost thou not in pride and scorn fill with tempest all my morn, and with jealousies and fears fill my pleasant nights with tears? Seven of my sweet loves thy knife has bereaved. Weep night and day around the tombs where my loves lay, and seven more loves attend each night around my couch with torches bright. And seven more loves in my bed, crowned with one my mournful head, pitying and forgiving all thy transgressions great and small. Where wilt thou to renew my loves and them to life renew? When wilt thou return and live? When wilt thou pity as I forgive? O'er my sins thou sit alone. Hast thou no sins of thy own? O'er my sins thou sit and weep, and lull thy own sins fast asleep. What transgressions I commit, all for thy transgressions fit. They thy harlots thou their slave, and my tears and groans of lead bind around